In 1984, the line between imagination and reality was about to be blurred. For young Davy Osborne, life was a series of tabletop RPGs and a high-score chase on his Atari. But everything changed when a dying man handed him a top-secret game cartridge called Cloak and Dagger. Featuring a performance by Henry Thomas that proved E.T. was no fluke, this flick wasn't your typical kids' movie. It was a gritty, high-stakes game of cat and mouse where the game over screen could be permanent. So grab your walkie-talkies, hide your Atari 5200 cartridges, and fill up your water gun with red dye as Ben Carpenter and I discuss Cloak and Dagger from 1984 on this episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. Welcome in, everybody. So glad to have you here on the show. I'm your host, Tim Williams. I can't go on a mission this dangerous all by myself. I need a partner who knows how to navigate the technical specs of a spy thriller and also has the heart of an 80s classic. Please welcome back to the show, the one, the only, Ben Carpenter. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing great, and I'm ready to back you up as we go on this mission together.
I'm not saying that you're the, my sidekick, but I love the line that she says. She's like, why do you hang with Davey? He's the only guy I know that's not boring. So, so I wouldn't say that for you, but it's like, I love that line.
I'm one of many guys, that isn't boring. How about that?
So yeah, we're talking about Cloak and Dagger, which is like a childhood staple. We're going to talk about it. I love this movie so much.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a fun one to talk about. So let's jump right in. So Ben, you know how we do it. When did you see Cloak and Dagger for the very first time?
It's been over 40 years, and honestly, I hadn't seen it in the interim. So yeah, I know that's something we'll cover in a minute. Next question, yes, but I don't honestly remember. I feel like I saw it in the theater, but I feel also like I saw it dozens of more times on HBO.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's probably what I remember the most is watching it every time it came on HBO.
I remember seeing this one in the theater. I think it was it was either in the summer, because I think it came out in the summertime. Yeah, I do remember that. So it was either like during the day, my mom took me and a friend to go see it. I don't remember if my mom watched it with us or if she just took us, but it was either, I remember it being during the day because I remember going to a McDonald's or something after the movie was over. But so I know I saw it in the theater, but like you, it had to be every day, multiple times a day on HBO as a kid. I saw it so many times, so many times. But amazingly, it kind of became that movie that just kind of disappeared after a while. Like it doesn't show up in a lot of, they don't play it on TV anymore. I don't see it on, I was able to find a Blu-ray copy, but I had to really search for it. But it's not one, I don't remember having this on VHS. I don't remember having it on DVD. It just wasn't one of those movies that just kind of stayed in the mind or pop culture of the decades that followed. But
yeah,
this movie is so tied to my childhood. Like I can't imagine thinking about the 80s without thinking about this movie for sure.
The same here. And it's weird that it's so sort of ingrained in both of us.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned it to a few people that I was, going to be recording this episode with you, and they really didn't remember it at all. And
wow, which is crazy.
Yeah. And to me, to be fair, I didn't remember the movie. I just remembered loving it. I remembered the title, and I remembered that I loved that movie when I was a kid.
Yeah. So, I guess you already answered the question. So you haven't seen it since you watched it back as a kid?
No, I hadn't seen it. And watched it last night for the first time in 40 years. And it was weird because it was a very strange experience. You know, I've rewatched a lot of movies for this podcast, doing the episodes with you over the last couple of years, and all of them have been movies that most of them have been movies that I've seen every now and then, or I've seen bits and pieces of over the years. Some of them, like on Golden Pond, I hadn't seen in a long time,
right?
But I still remembered what the movie was about. I remembered scenes from it. It was almost like I had my memory wiped on this. For some reason, I remembered I loved this movie.
Right.
And I remembered nothing else about it. I knew Henry Thomas and Dabney Coleman were in it.
That was
and that it was a spy thing.
Right.
And that was it. And so, but as I started watching it, it just everything like, oh yeah, set in San Antonio. And I was, there's a scene at the Alamo. I remember that now. Like, I just started, it was really cool because it just, everything sort of flowed back into me as I was watching it, and felt like a kid again. So.
Like hearing an old song on the radio you haven't heard in like 30 years, and like, oh, it takes you right back to whatever memory you have associated with it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember how I saw this, probably 10 years ago. I don't know if it was on a streamer for or for a brief moment, or, when I was thinking about starting the podcast, and was thinking about movies of my childhood, I might have found it on YouTube and watched like a rough, not rough copy, but like a non HD version of it. And I remember and I think at that point it was kind of like you, was like, I remembered loving the movie. I remembered Dabney Coleman. I remembered Henry Thomas, but I didn't remember exactly all, that much about it until I watched it again. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. I kind of, the same thing, like the things, oh, okay, this is coming up. But when it got to the end, I was like, I don't remember this at all. Then, I remembered his, like, spoiler alert, when he thinks it's Jack Flack coming out of the flames, like that's his dad. Like, I remembered that scene, but had totally forgot, like, they end up at the airport. Like, when they started going there, was like, this ends at the airport? So anyway, so yeah, but I remember that. But so I watched it then, and then when I got the Blu-ray a couple of, last year, I was like, I have to go and I had to watch it again. Like I had been wanting to watch it again since watching it 10 years ago. So I watched it last year, and then I watched it again today. So I've seen it a couple of times in the last 40 years, but yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. My son watched it with me.
Okay. Yeah.
Last night. He said he wasn't going to. We talked about it at dinner, and he was like, nah, I don't think so. But then I started watching it, and he came out and sat with me and watched it. And I think he was interested in it as sort of an 80s relic, just looking at, I mean, my God, the scene at the airport at the end, and just like how much airports have changed since then. It looks, So he was interested in it. I don't think he loved it, but he's in his 20s. He's not being exposed to it for the first time in that, 9 or 10 years old or whatever I was when it came out.
Yeah.
That's what really sort of, that's why it made such a big impression on me, I'm sure.
For sure. Yeah. Same here. All right. Well, we've got the nostalgia flowing. Now it's time to see how much of the behind the scenes data you've already downloaded. We're heading into our new trivia segment. I don't know if you've done this with us before. Have you done a trivia segment with us?
No, I don't think I have.
This is new. So this is new for this year. I call it Risky Quizness. That's my little title for this. So
I see what you did there. Okay.
So I've got a few facts and a few fabrications pulled from the production files. Your job is to tell me what's true and what's false. Are you ready to lock in your answers?
Sure.
Yeah. So instead of like doing a deep dive of like the behind the scenes, like pre-production, I decided to put it into true or false. So usually if I have more than one co-host, they kind of work as a team, but it's just you. But I think you'll do okay. So I've got, I have 3 questions and I have a bonus question. Okay. So first time having a bonus question, but we'll see why. So here we go. Number 1, Risky Quizness. Here we go. The Cloak and Dagger game featured in the film was actually a real Atari 5200 game that was released in stores months before the movie hit theaters. True or false?
I actually know from looking that up yesterday because, well, I'll just say I know that's false.
Yeah.
But I felt like I remembered playing the game. And it was one of those things, the Mandela effect kind of thing.
Right,
I'm like, did I really remember playing the game, or did I just watch the movie so much that I felt like I remembered playing the game?
Yeah.
I do feel, and I looked it up, and it wasn't ever released on the 5200, although that was in the works for a while. They never actually released it.
Right.
But it was released. It was an arcade game.
Yeah.
And so maybe I remember playing the arcade game if I came across it. It said it was kind of rare.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I'm sure if I ever saw the arcade game, I was there playing it. So
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever popped up anywhere where I got to play it. But it did say, it was an arcade game already. They were planning for the Atari 5200 version. It was already a modified version of a pre-existing game called Agent X. And that's when I thought maybe a friend of mine or somebody I knew had the Agent X game. Even watching it today, I was like, I kind of feel like it seems somewhat familiar of, the guy trying to move around the circles of the cases or whatever.
Right.
But the home version was never released due to the public. Released to the public due to the video game crash of 1983, which I think we talked about on a previous episode about how I don't know if that might not have been with you, but one of the episodes I think we talked about how Atari didn't patent their games. Was that it?
I don't know.
I'm
familiar with like the E.T. game.
Yeah.
That was I guess around that time. Yeah. But no, I'm not really familiar with it. I don't remember there being a crash. I do remember, the 5200 didn't really do as well as the 2600.
Yeah. Because even when he's playing with that joystick, I was like, I don't remember that joystick at all. Like that's not the Atari that I played.
No, I never had that. I just stuck with my 2600. That was good enough for me.
I remember. So my Atari story is my mom. I remember her calling us at home, or she was out Christmas shopping, and I think she basically asked my dad, could she buy the Atari game for Christmas? And that, that was a big amount of money, but she obviously found somewhere where it was a good deal, and so she bought it for quote unquote my dad. It was supposed to be his game system, but of course, me and my sister took over it. But it came with Space Invaders. That was the game that it came with.
Yep.
And we played it so much that after a couple of years, you couldn't see the little dots coming down from the ships. So you could never tell if they were going to hit you or not. And we couldn't, eventually we just stopped playing. I think my sister kept trying to play, like just trying to move and just if it happens, it happens. But you would just be going back and forth and you would just die because you couldn't see the dots falling.
Right.
So we talk about that a lot. But I think it was something about how like Atari thought they had owned the market. And then I think the other, like the cheaper versions of games were able to be played on the Atari, and they were making them cheaper, and people were not buying the Atari games because they were so much more expensive. And I remember that we had more of the off-brand games than we had because I remember Frogger was the big Atari game, and we had a game called Freeway, which was basically the same game, but it was a chicken crossing the road instead of Frogger jumping across the lily pad. So
No, I remember Sears had like their own version. Is that what it was?
So. Yeah, it might have been. It might have been. So, but yeah. All right. So you got number one right. Good job. Number two. Here we go. The climax of the film takes place at the historic Alamo, but the production was forced to build a replica because the city wouldn't let them film an action sequence at the real landmark. True or false?
That one I don't know, but it sounds plausible, so I'll say true.
Sorry, got that one wrong. So it's false. They filmed on location in San Antonio, but the big finale actually takes place at the San Antonio International Airport. However, many other scenes were shot at the famous Riverwalk and the Tower of the Americas. So yeah, they did film at the Alamo, which I thought was, pretty impressive. But they're not there very long, so obviously they didn't have much time to film there. And I think I read somewhere else like they had to film after hours, like they wouldn't allow them to take away from the tourist time. So yes, they had to work around its schedule. So all right, number 3. See if you can. Here's your chance to get
Okay.
2 out of
Yeah.
3. Henry Thomas was cast in the film after Steven Spielberg personally recommended him to director Richard Franklin following their work together on E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
Again, that sounds pretty plausible. We've had 2 falses, so I think I'm going to go true on this one again.
And you would be correct, yes. Spielberg was so impressed with Henry's emotional range that he helped champion him for the role of Davy, knowing the kid could actually carry a movie on his shoulders. And I think he did a great job.
I do too.
So, all right. So I'm going to say that you won that round because you got 2 out of 3.
Yeah, 2 out of 3. That's yeah.
Yep. I do have a bonus question, so we'll see how well you know this one. This one is a toughie.
Okay.
Cloak and Dagger is a remake of a suspenseful 1940s movie.
I think I saw that it was based loosely on a short story that was from a long time. It was from, a few decades before, but I don't know if it was. Sure, we'll go true.
Okay. You would have won either way. It's kind of a trick question. It's true and it's false.
Okay.
So Richard Franklin was actually asked to do a remake of the movie The Window, which was released in 1949, which is based on Cornell Woolrich's short story The Boy Cried Murder, which Universal owned the rights to. However, when Henry Thomas was cast, he needed a different element, and so he basically morphed the plot into Cloak and Daggers. It is somewhat of a remake, but it's kind of more like loosely based on the original story. But he added his whole idea of having Jack Flack being like the imaginary friend. That's what kind of separated it from the others. Fun fact, the story has actually been adapted 3 other times. The first time was called The Window, which I heard was like basically a remake of Rear Window, but with a kid instead of an adult. Then it was The Boy Cried Murder, and then the last one was Eyewitness, which came out in 1970. Kind of a somewhat familiar story.
Yeah, yeah.
So good job.
Well, thank you.
All right, so let us know, listeners and viewers, how you did on the trivia. Send us a message on social media. You can leave us a comment right here in YouTube if you're watching us on YouTube. All right, well, let's talk about the cast. We kind of talked about it already. Of course, we talk about Henry Thomas as Davy. I will say Osborne, even though I think Dabney Coleman says Osborne. He said like a weird way
with
once.
his Texas accent.
Yeah. So he began his career as a child actor and had the lead role, of course, as Elliot in the film E.T. the Extraterrestrial. He had other roles in other films, including Frog Dreaming in 86, Valmont in 89, Fire in the Sky in 93, are 3 movies that I know nothing about, but he came back in 94 with Legends of the Fall, Suicide Kings in 1997, All the Pretty Horses in 2000. He appears in Gangs of New York in 2002 and Dear John in 2010.
I was telling my son, we were talking about Henry Thomas after and how he was in, a few movies towards the beginning of the 80s that were big. I mean, E.T., obviously, especially.
Right.
And then I felt like he just sort of disappeared for a few decades. And then recently I've seen him in some of the Netflix series that Mike Flanagan, I think is the director's name, who does those
like horror suspense movies.
Yeah. And some of those have been really good, I think. And he's always he's just sort of one of his go-to actors. And
Yep. I think he's still, seeing him pop up in like the 90s, I was like, oh man, it looks kind of like the kid from E.T. And it's like, oh, that is the kid from E.T. just grown up. So,
right.
Yeah. Very good. So, and then of course, Dabney Coleman as Jack Flack and Hal Osborne. We've talked about him on other movies, including 9 to 5, which we've covered, on Golden Pond, of course, Ben and I covered. He was also in Tootsie in 1982, War Games in 83, and You've Got Mail in 1998. Dabney Coleman is by far one of my favorite actors from the 80s. He's just one of the, and this being one where he kind of gets to play 2 different characters was a lot of fun, kind of seeing him kind of being the action hero, the rough and tough guy, and then also kind of being the dad who's in the military, but seems to have kind of a softer side. He's stern, but you see the dad, moments. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
really
son, again, was totally unfamiliar with Dabney Coleman. I mean, I think maybe he recognized him when he saw it, but he didn't recognize the name when he was asking me about the movie before he decided to watch it with me. And
Right.
I said, Dabney Coleman was kind of like John Hamm. He turned up in comedies, he turned up in dramas, he just turned
Right.
up a lot in
Right.
a lot of different things.
Right.
And is always just good at whatever he's doing. He's always fun to watch.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think Nicholas has mentioned before, it's like he's one of those actors where he's always good, even in a bad movie. Like, even if the movie is bad, he's going to be great in it. And I think that's true. Not that he did a lot of bad movies, but I think anything I've seen him in, he is definitely one of the highlights of the movie for sure. So he did say in a 2012 interview, this is his quote, "I thought the movie was a great idea. I didn't get along with the director, but it was great working with that little kid, Henry Thomas. What a great kid and a great actor. I'll tell you, though, it's amazing how many people have come up to me and said something to me about that film. That happens to me 2 or 3 times a year. It's always either a father saying, I saw that movie with my son, or a son saying, I saw it with my dad. But then they say, seeing that movie was very important in my life. And that's always very nice to hear." That was worth sharing, which I think is good. So, and I can say, like, once again, I think it resonates with me because my dad being in the military, I, understood that. Of course, my mom was still living, so that wasn't, didn't have that part. But having, having him see his father figure, or seeing his father as a hero figure, or having that transition from having that imaginary friend of this hero, and then realizing it's really, it's really his dad. His dad is his real hero. I think that I don't think I understood that at that time, but it definitely resonated with me as I grew older, and I probably had a little bit more appreciation for my dad after seeing the movie. So
Yeah.
kind of hate that I didn't see it with him. When I think about it, I'm sure we watched it together when it was on HBO, but seeing it in the theater with him, I didn't have that experience.
Yeah. I for some reason, I feel like as I started watching it, I was like, oh, yeah, his dad is never around. His dad's always traveling or something. And that really wasn't the case. His dad just had a job. It wasn't that unusual a situation, other than the fact that, he had lost his mother. And as Dabney Coleman's father character says early on, that he's having a hard time dealing with that. And, yeah, I mean, obviously that's the heart of the movie, is that father-son relationship. And from the viewpoint of a child, sort of seeing their dad as both things, wishing your dad was around more, wishing you had a stronger connection with your dad, but also seeing your dad as sort of this invincible action hero.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really interesting.
All right, so we'll move down with the cast. We've got Michael Murphy as Rice. He was the main guy chasing after them. He had roles in the films such as MASH in 1970, The Year of Living Dangerously in 83, Salvador in 86, Batman Returns in 92, X-Men: The Last Stand in 2006, and Fall in 2014, among other. Yeah, he's been in a bunch of stuff. Like, I definitely recognized him, even being young, a little bit younger in this movie. But yeah. And then a name I would not recognize, but Christina Nigra as Kim Gardner, which was his friend, sidekick, I guess you would say. Her other film roles, she was a voice in the Sword and the Sorcerer animated movie. She was also in Twilight Zone, the movie. But she was mostly known for TV shows like Mr. Belvedere, Out of This World, and the TV version of Harry and the Hendersons, which didn't last very long. But yeah. I think she had her recurring role was on Out of This World, which I remember watching. I think it came on like Saturday afternoons as a kid. I don't know if you remember that one.
I remember the title. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't think I watched it really, but
it was a syndicated show. It was like that one and Small Wonder. Small Wonder was a little girl that was a robot.
Right.
But Out of This World was like the mother basically the daughter was the offspring of her mother's fling with an alien. So she was part alien, but didn't know that and was like starting to come to realize that she was an alien anyway. I don't,
Okay. Huh.
Probably a bad description, but that's kind of what and like haven't seen an episode in probably 30 years. That's kind of what I remembered. But I remember watching both of those shows as a kid. Like I said, I think it came on Saturday mornings after the cartoons went off, or like early Saturday afternoons. It was like one of those that came on once a week. But yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
And then I will kind of talk about these two together, Jeanette Nolan and John McIntyre, which are the elderly couple that when we get into iconic scenes, I'm going to talk about them a little bit. So Jeanette was her film debut was Lady Macbeth opposite director actor Orson Welles, who we just talked about in our Transformers episode. But his version of Macbeth in 1948. Her final film role was as Tom Booker, Robert Redford's mother, Ellen Booker, in The Horse Whisperer in 1998. She made more than 300 television appearances, including episode roles in Perry Mason, I Spy, MacGyver, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and a regular on The Richard Boone Show and The Virginian. She actually received 4 Emmy nominations. And then John McIntyre was her husband. He won the role of Christopher Hale in 1961 after Wagon Train series star Ward Bond died and succeeded the late Charles Bickford in The Virginian 1962. His deep, dusty, resonant voice was utilized often for narratives and documentaries. He and his longtime wife, actress Jeanette Nolan, who mentioned, became the Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee of the Sagebrush set, appearing together as quintessential frontier couple for decades and decades. They were married for 56 years until John's death of emphysema in 1991.
So. Wow. Yeah, they were both. I recognized them, or I remembered them as soon as I saw them from this. But I feel like I remembered them. I mean, they looked familiar. They looked like the kind. I mean, I feel like I've seen other things with them in it.
Yeah.
Over the years. But yeah, they sort of lend a. I mean, they're. You see them and they just look sort of old Hollywood,
Yeah.
It's sort of like when, and I'm not surprised to learn that they were married in real life. I didn't know that, but they kind of a Jessica Tandy, Hume Cronin kind of vibe from them.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been them playing those roles just as easily.
Of course. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. But they seemed like a natural married grandma and grandpa type couple for sure. So,
right.
All right, we'll get a few more here. He's William Forsythe, but here he was credited as Bill Forsythe. He's best known for his portrayal of tough guy criminal characters and starred in films such as Once Upon a Time in America in 1984, Raising Arizona in 1987, another favorite of mine, Dick Tracy in 1990, The Rock in 1996, Blue Streak in 1999, The Devil's Rejects in 2005. He also played recurring characters in TV series such as Boardwalk Empire in 2010 and Justified also in 2010. But yeah, I remember when I rewatched this a couple of years ago and he popped up, I was like, oh my gosh, I know that guy, like, but I couldn't think of his name, but he would look very different. So
yeah, he did look different in this. And I don't know. I feel like if I didn't see his name in the credits, it would have driven me nuts. Like looking at him, like, who is that? He looks so familiar.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously Raising Arizona is one of my all-time favorites too. Have you done an episode on Raising Arizona?
I haven't.
Okay, if you do it without me, I'm done with you. So whenever you do Raising Arizona, we're doing that one.
I'll definitely add to the list. That's another one that I have. It's on the list. It's one of those. It's on the list. Like I've got to do it, and it just keeps. It keeps missing the calendar. But yeah. And I bought that on Blu-ray last year as well because I hadn't seen it in a long time. But yeah.
Right. But
so fun.
William Forsythe is the one who asks, "Do these balloons blow up into funny shapes?" To which the reply is no, unless in round is funny. This is one of my favorite lines.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. Him and John Goodman that movie's just great. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
Last one I'm going to mention, Robert Duquois. I'm going to hopefully that's how you say his last name, is Lieutenant Fleming, the police officer that brings Davy home and then shows up back up again at the end. He's best known for his roles as King George in the 1973 film Coffee, starring Pam Grier. He was also in Robert Altman's film Nashville, as well as Sergeant Warren Reed in RoboCop in 1987 and its sequel RoboCop 2 and RoboCop 3. He's also known for the voice of Pablo Robertson on the cartoon series Harlem Globetrotters from 1970 to 1973. Another one of those that guys. I knew him from RoboCop for sure. That's where I definitely recognized him from.
Mm-hmm.
Two guys I did not cover is the kind of the henchmen or the the heavies. They're very much that guys. Like there wasn't a lot I could find about them on IMDb or Wikipedia, but they've both been in a lot of different things. The guy with the mustache, the bigger guy, I knew he had to have been in a bunch of like beer commercials, but he was also a former football player, which is probably why I recognize him in beer commercials. But he was also the brother of Rick Rosanovich, I think, who was in Roxanne, Top Gun.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's done a few more. So
yeah,
really? Yeah,
okay.
That's his brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
Yeah, that was an odd choice, an odd costuming choice to have him in a sweatsuit the whole time. It's not very menacing.
No.
And I wonder if the actor was just like, no, I'm doing it if he was like John Fetterman, in the Senate, if he's like, no, I'm just wearing my sweatsuit.
Right. He's like, I'm an athlete. I gotta have my stretchy pants on. So yeah. And then who was not listed in the credits, or that I saw when I was doing my notes before I rewatched the movie, but a blink and you miss it cameo of the late great Louis Anderson as one of the cab drivers or whatever on the street corner. So
he was in the credits of the version I watched. Maybe they added him later. But it said cab driver number 2 or something.
Is that what it was? Okay,
Louis Anderson. Yeah.
I don't think I watched the end credits on this one like I normally do, but like when I was going through my, I pull up the cast on like Wikipedia and IMDb, and he wasn't, in that main cast. So that's probably why I didn't think about it. But I would think even with Wikipedia, they would mention like, and a special cameo appearance by Louis, but that was before anybody really knew who Louis Anderson was.
He just has one line. I don't even remember what it is. It's like, get out of here, kid, or something.
It's like it's gonna be $20. He's like, I don't have $20. So get out of here, kid. You bother me.
Right.
So, but yeah. So I think of Louis Anderson's cameos is like this and Coming to America. Like that's where I remember, seeing Louis Anderson kind of the first time. So, all right. Anybody else from the cast that might have overlooked, or somebody you wanted to mention, or did we cover them all?
I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay. Yeah. Good deal. All right, well, let's jump into iconic favorite scenes. So I know you hadn't seen it in a long time, but even now after rewatching it, so if someone said to you now, Cloak and Dagger, what's the first scene that pops in your head? It might be more than one. I think I have a few.
Yeah. I was just, I just sort of got into the flow of it. I mean, I guess the Riverwalk chases. Were something that, once I saw it, I really remembered that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the stuff with the plane at the end, definitely, that I remembered that. And, so, I mean, to me too, sort of the scenes just of the kids hanging out in the game shop.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I feel like when I was a kid, like that's probably a big part of why I loved the movie, because that's where I like to be too. Like I never got really into Dungeons and Dragons, but
no, I didn't either. Yeah.
A little bit. Like I bought a few of the sets and kind of tried to get into it for a little while, and you can see a rack of just the Dungeons and Dragons in the background, and like that game shop just looks like where 9-year-old Ben would have wanted to be.
Yeah. I don't think we had it. I don't remember them having a shop like that anywhere close to me where I lived when this movie came out. So thinking that a shop like that existed, like I said, we went to Sears and bought our Atari games, or we went to like, the whatever kind of local mall store would have a few on hand. But like even watching it today, and like there's that whole rack of like just a whole line of different types of Atari games. It was like, as a kid, I've been like, where is that store at? Because I need to look at every single one that they have, So Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for me, like I said, I mentioned already the silhouette of Jack Black kind of morphing into his dad at the end coming through from the flames. That's a scene that I've vaguely, or not vaguely, I distinctly remember from
Mm-hmm.
seeing it as a kid. Uh, the scene that freaked me out as a kid, and I still, it doesn't freak me out now, but I think about that when I see it now, is when he mentions that, the person they're looking for is missing 2 fingers, or only has 3 fingers. And even though it's an error, what I noticed today, she takes the glove off before she says it, but then it shows her taking the glove off again for the close up where
Right.
it reveals that she's the one they're looking for. So, uh, but I think, like, as once again, twists were not something that as a 9, 10-year-old kid I would have thought about, but that's big twist because, like, especially as a kid, this old elderly couple befriends you. Those are people you're going to trust. Like, for them to turn out to be the real spies was like, that was such a big twist for a kid's mind to wrap his head around. Like, I can't trust my grandparents anymore.
Right.
Like, don't trust the old people. What's
What if my
happening?
grandparents are secretly
Right, exactly.
spies?
Yeah,
Double agents.
right. So that scene I definitely remember, and then I remember the scene where Jack Flack gets shot. Even though it's kind of like his, uh, they make him where he's kind of like half invisible, like almost like a hologram in that one scene.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't really figure out why.
Yeah, and then he comes back full. I was like, I don't know why they chose to do it
Right.
that way, unless it was like showing that he was starting to fade from Davies, like he's not as real as he thought he was for a moment. So,
Yes.
I didn't get a chance. I was like, I may rewatch it with the commentary and find out for sure, because the DVD copy I have has the commentary with the screenwriter, Tom Holland, not Spider-Man Tom
Right.
Holland, the other
Yeah.
Tom Holland.
Right. That would
So
be weird because he would have probably not even. Yeah, I'm sure he wasn't born yet when
no,
when
not
this
even
came out.
close. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing about that scene that I know when I watched it on, like, once again, when I watched it on Blu-ray the first time, the much higher definition. I don't know if it was for you, but
Mhm.
Jack Black's wearing that, like, all leather gray suit, kind
Mhm.
of, pants and jacket. But there's, like, you can see the, like, little holes in different spots on his suit. And I don't know, like, it for some reason it just automatically caught my attention. Like, it's because everything's cut. It has like lines for
Mhm.
like the layers, but you just see like these little bitty small holes. And I was like, before it happened, I was like, I think that's where he starts bleeding, because I remembered that, how they start talking, he begins to start bleeding, and those are little blood packets. When he starts to bleed, you can see it kind of outline the round piece, where it's like
Oh,
they're almost like little pellets
right.
that they had in there. They were probably,
Squibs or
yeah,
whatever they call
squibs,
them.
whatever, yeah.
Mhm.
But it's so funny, like, as a kid and watching on an old, standard TV, we wouldn't have been able to see it that clean, but, like, now with high definition, you kinda see those things. But once again, I still love it because practical effects. I'm always a fan of the practical effects, so,
Oh,
but yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are kinda like my iconic scenes, but yeah. What about favorite scenes? Any scenes that you just, like, really enjoyed? Like, I think I mentioned mine is, like, the whole chase or the boat scene in San Antonio. Like, that was just a fun, great sequence, um, that I really liked, for sure.
And as I said, I've totally forgotten about this movie over the years,
Mhm.
and or at least the plot of it. And a few years ago, we went to San Antonio and we took that boat tour. Like
Oh, really?
we yeah, and it didn't cross my mind. Oh, this is
Cloak
what
and
they did in
Dagger.
Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah, yeah.
But watching it last night, I was like, oh yeah, that's how it goes.
Mhm,
It's still that way. You get on a raft and it's about a
mhm,
20-30 minute tour, just like he says. And,
mhm.
yeah. So, um, yeah, I mean, having visited San Antonio, eh, it's a cool city, and it's cool to see it sort of portrayed in a movie like that. And,
Mhm.
I always like that when a movie is sort of set in a place and you feel like you get to explore that place
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
through the
for sure.
movie,
Yeah.
rather than it just being in some, in LA, just
Mhm,
because that's where they
mhm.
filmed it. So, well, let's just
Right.
make it in LA or whatever.
Right.
You know, a lot of times, a lot of stuff is filmed around here in Atlanta where we live, but a lot of times it's not really supposed to be Atlanta.
Right,
I like
exactly.
it when it's supposed to be Atlanta because then it's, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway.
That landmark makes sense because it's in Atlanta.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Same thing. Like I was told, because I was too young to remember, that we did a family trip to San Antonio when I was very little, but I don't have any memory of it. There's pictures of me as like a little kid out at the Alamo. No recollection. So my only memories of the Alamo are from this and Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So
right. You know, there's no basement at the Alamo.
Yeah, there's no basement in the Alamo. Yeah. And I know not to leave your camera bag in the middle of the floor, or run out the door with it. So, yeah, yeah. Any other scenes? I mean, like, there's so many great scenes. I mean, it's just a fun movie from beginning to end. The pacing is really good. Like, it really moves really well. It doesn't drag in any places. And I did watch a little bit of one of the documentaries on the Blu-ray where they were talking to the screenwriter, Tom Holland, and talking about in creating the thriller. He's like, um, one of the things you really want to do is, like, when you're writing a thriller is you have to take away all the safe spaces. So they were talking about how when the bad guys are coming into his home, like, that's a safe space, like, and you have to build that intensity where you as the audience feel like there's nowhere for this kid to go. Like, there is no out. And even like getting on the plane, like, once that plane starts moving, how are you going to get out? Which I thought was, once again, very smart. So very good, very good screenwriter.
Even taking away safe people, like the elderly couple, you think they're safe, and then they're not.
Right. Yeah. And you kill off the people he trusts, like the Bill Forsythe's character, I can't think of his name now off the top of my head, but that was in the game shop. Like, him getting killed was like another big, like, oh my gosh, they killed somebody in the movie. Oh, another scene that I remember, like, I say traumatizing me, but like watching it in the movie as a kid, thinking like, wow, they really did that, is when Henry Thomas shoots the bad guy. Like, you usually see the kid being saved by someone else that kills the bad guy, but in this instance, and then he has that whole confrontation, was like, you did it, you made me kill him. He's like, it would have been self-defense, but rational thoughts that a kid would think, like, I didn't want to do that. Why did you make me do that? Which I thought, once again, it's just it's a great movie. I'm gonna say it a million times. It's such a good movie.
Well, here's the thing. Like, like I've said several times, I didn't have any memory of this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I knew that I loved it in the early 80s when I was a kid. And then I knew that it just sort of, like you said, it went away, that it's not talked about. It's not available anywhere. It's not in the culture at all, really.
Right.
Like a lot of other movies from the early 80s are. And so I sort of, when I sat down to watch it, I was prepared for it to be bad. Like, I thought, well,
yeah.
It probably, there's a reason that nobody talks about it.
It's got to be problematic in some way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I was surprised. It's not bad at all. It's actually, it's there, there's probably, if you examine the plot, I'm sure you can find a lot of holes. It's not like, it's the spy thriller aspect of it is really only sort of told enough for a kid to go along with it,
Exactly. Yeah.
But which is all they, it's a kid's movie basically. But yeah, I thought it was well made and well written, well acted. Maybe with a couple of exceptions, but pretty well acted
overall
for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And I don't really understand why it's not at least a little more sort of still in our pop culture atmosphere. Why has it seemingly disappeared so much? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because everybody thinks of Henry Thomas as the E.T. kid, and
yeah.
And really, this is the only other. I can't think of anything else. You mentioned a couple things, but I had never heard of that he was in the early 80s. It was really E.T. and this that were, I think this was, well, I know you'll get to it, that I don't know how this did at the box office at the time, but
yeah, we'll get there. I was gonna say there was another movie that he did probably right around the same, maybe like a year or two later, called The Quest, and I see it pop up in some of my 80s groups that I remember seeing. I don't remember anything, kind of like you. I remember seeing it as a kid and liking it, but I don't know anything about it. But it was one that we saw on VHS that we either checked out at the library or rented as a kid. So I'm gonna have to find that one and rewatch it and figure out what that was about. But I remember like they've been showing like the cover, the VHS cover. I'm like, I know I saw that movie, but I don't remember anything about it. But it's Henry Thomas is the main character. And he looks just like maybe a year or two older than he does in this movie. So I'll have to go back and find that one and see if you know why that one's coming up. Why that one's coming up in my 80s groups and not Cloak and Dagger. But we're gonna change it up.
Yeah, I was just thinking that there were even some special effects in this movie that were pretty impressive. I mean, especially for the time. But when Jack Flack and Davy are crossing the street, they cross the street in traffic. Now, these days, it would just be, oh, those are CG cars.
Right.
But in 1983 or whenever they shot this, those weren't CG cars. So and they look like they're zipping right past Henry Thomas. So I meant to go back and watch that again and try to figure out, okay, how did they shoot that without
really hurting anybody?
Yeah. Putting someone in real danger. But
one thing I was going to say when we talked about being set in San Francisco, it wasn't in my notes, but I think when I was doing research for this before, because it was weird doing the research for this because like I feel like I've done research on this before, so I don't know if at some point a couple of years ago I was going to do an episode and it didn't pan out, but I'd already started doing research on it. But I want to say like one of the reasons it was filmed in San Antonio is because that's where Henry Thomas lived, or that's where his hometown.
I did see that.
Yeah, so his family wanted him to film something local and not be far away, especially after the success of E.T., becoming much more famous. They wanted to kind of keep him close to home. So, which I think was, once again, I think worked like you just said, worked to the advantage of the movie, putting it in a city that doesn't get a lot of, doesn't get a lot of film locations there. So.
I believe I read that Dabney Coleman is originally from Austin.
He's from, I think so.
That's just right down the road too.
Oh yeah, so, He probably loved being in Texas for that shoot as well. So. All right, well, let's jump into some trivia. Maybe think about some other scenes as we go. But, I mentioned Tom Holland a couple of times here. So he also wrote a movie called Scream for Help that came out in 1984. It was a financial release, but not well received. But these are the final screenplays that were produced prior to him becoming a director with 1985's Fright Night, which we talked about last year. All three films feature the same basic plot. A kid discovers her life is in danger, but no one will believe them. And Tom Holland talked about that, where he had before he got the writing job for this, he was actually pitching Fright Night to get made, and nobody wanted to make the movie. And so he got some of that idea of like, here's a kid in danger. He needs somebody that he trusts that kind of believes him. So that he kind of morphed those two things together, which kind of makes sense when you look at it now.
Yeah. I was not on that Fright Night episode. That's another one that I haven't seen in a long time, but I remember it as being really good.
It is. Yeah. Yep. That's one of those that works. It's not quite a comedy, though, even though it has some comic elements in it, so it doesn't lean too much in the comedy, but it's really well done. And once again, it's kind of taking the typical horror story and giving it some different nuances that set it apart, which I think is why it did so well. So, and good performances, good writing. Talk about.
Yeah.
I did like this little trivia nugget. Several times the Cloak and Dagger game cartridge is referred to as "quote unquote" a tape.
Yeah.
This may have been due to the screenwriter's unfamiliarity with video games at the time. Many home computers could load games and programs from cassette tapes, but not Atari or other home game consoles, which all use solid-state cartridges. Primarily, however, was because of the game cartridge's resemblance to an 8-track audio tape cartridge, which would still have been familiar objects to audiences in 1984. At that time, not only the writers, but the public in general often called game cartridges tapes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's how I remembered it when I started hearing them refer to, they kept calling it a tape.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, people called them tapes.
Yeah, but we knew tape, like cassette tapes were so common.
Right.
That's what we thought about. So, yeah. And honestly, for me, like I didn't really know about computers and gaming, like playing games on computers until well after we had Ataris. So, like, not even thinking about, back then it was the floppy disk that you bought that had the games on them or whatever. So, but I remember my friend had Family Feud on his computer. That was the greatest thing to be able to play Family Feud on the computer.
Yeah, my computer game, my go-to computer game was, I think it was called Zork.
That sounds like a game, yeah.
Yeah, it was a text game. It said, you are in this room, blah blah
Well,
blah.
yeah,
What do you
yeah.
do? And you
Yeah.
would, yeah.
I remember those games, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved that game. Yeah.
All right, then my last little trivia nugget here. The Invisible Bomber project plans contained within the secret game cartridge strongly resembles the United States Air Force SR-71 Blackbird. Not known to the general public at the time of the film's release, it was designed to be a stealth aircraft and had indeed sprung from a secret Air Force project to produce a supersonic stealth bomber. As it was fielded, the SR-71 ended up as a stealth reconnaissance platform. The Invisible Bomber plans in the film include a reference to a forward-looking infrared pod, or FLIR, which now is well known as a component of military attack craft. At the time of the filming, however, it would have been something considered futuristic, which I thought was pretty cool. Like, when the plans coming out, I was like, "Oh, that's definitely the stealth bomber." But
Yeah,
back then,
Blackbird. Yeah.
we wouldn't have known that's what that was. That was completely unknown to us. So. All right, well, let's talk about box office. We'll start wrapping it up here. In the United States, the movie was released in a limited release on a double bill with The Last Starfighter. It released on July 13th as a double feature, and then a month later, on August 10th, it was then re-released separately. When it was re-released, it opened at number 7 at the weekend box office, being surpassed by Red Dawn, which debuted at number 1. So I think it did. I don't have the box office numbers here, but I think it did okay. It wasn't quite, of course, it wasn't quite the monster hit as E.T. was, but I think it was a moderate success, which once again may be why. Well, you can't use that excuse why it didn't catch on, because we have movies that bombed at the box office that are still live on today as being cult classics. So, but
I didn't
yeah.
know. I don't remember ever going to see a double feature. Maybe we did once or twice, but that's a good pairing. This and The Last Starfighter.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they both, that kind of fits. So that's not too surprising.
I definitely saw both of these movies. I can't remember if I saw Last Starfighter in the theater, but
I do remember. I know I saw that one in the theater. I do remember that one.
Yeah. But but that would be a fun, now that I have both of them together, it might be a fun, like, Saturday afternoon just to kind of watch them both back to back and have some fun with that. So. All right, now it's time to take a look at how well this 80s flick holds up today. It's the Rewatchability Nostalgia Meter. It's our way of measuring how enjoyable a movie is for repeat viewings, along with the waves of nostalgia it brings. Here's how it works. It's a 1 to 10 scale. Any number between 1 and 10 will do, but here are a few parameters to help you decide. At the bottom of the meter is a number 1, which basically means I saw it once and that was enough. In the middle of the number 5 is a good rewatch every couple of years. And at the top, the highly coveted number 10, which means it's highly rewatchable and full of nostalgia. So, Ben, I give you the question. Where does Cloak and Dagger rank on the rewatchability nostalgia meter for you?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to think about it in those terms, having not seen it for so
40
long.
years.
Yeah. But then seeing it and, really enjoying it and having it sort of surprise me that it was as good as it was. And I felt felt a ton of nostalgia watching it, and it was enhanced by the fact that it was nostalgia that I didn't really remember until I saw it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, I mean, just based on watching it last night, I mean, like, I'd say 9, but, will I watch it again and again? Probably not. So, um, let's say 7, all things considered.
7 is a good place. I am actually going to give it a 9 because it is one that, now that I've watched it a couple of times in the last 10 years, now that I own it, like I said, I watched it probably not even 6 months ago and rewatched it again today and still enjoyed it.
Mhm.
I'm sure it's not one that I'm going to have to watch, you don't want to watch it too often because then you kind of loses some of the suspense of it, but it is a highly enjoyable movie. Definitely worth of a rewatch and, recommend if you haven't seen it in a long time. We've kind of stirred your nostalgia for you.
Mhm.
Definitely find it. Like I said, I was able to find actually it was a 4K and Blu-ray combo. I don't have a 4K player, so I didn't see it in 4K, so I don't know what the transfer looks like on that. But and then Ben was able to rent it on Apple.
Yeah, and it looked great there too.
Yeah,
I guess it was probably the same transfer that they used, and it looked good.
yeah. So definitely go back and check it out. So, but yeah, so 7 is good. 9, that's where I'm gonna put it pretty high. That's one of the highest rankings I've given to a movie. I think since we started doing the uh rewatchability nostalgia meter. So, but I stand by it. It's a 9.
Mhm. Yeah. I
So
s
let us know where you think Cloak and Dagger ranks on the rewatchability and nostalgia meter for you. You can send us an email, let us know on social media, or leave us a comment right here in the comments on YouTube.
I respect your rating of a 9, e even though I gave it a 7, yeah, it
Yeah.
honestly, it felt like a 9 when I was watching it,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
yeah.
once again, I think it's one of those rare movies that it holds it I think because it holds up so well, it's
Mhm.
definitely 80s, it's got 80s essence to it, the outfits, the cars, the lack of technology, the lack of security at the airport, as you mentioned
Right,
before.
yeah.
So, but still holds up story-wise and emotion-wise that it like you said, the father-son dynamic is really the heart of the movie, and I think why it holds up as well as it does. So,
Mhm.
all right, Benoit, thank you for jumping on this episode with me. I'm glad to have you as always. So, look forward to some more episodes here coming up over the next couple of months.
Yeah, well, I look forward to those as well, and it's always fun, and this one was particularly fun for me, so I appreciate you having me on and spurring me to rewatch this because 'cause I'm glad I did.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. So, all right, that's a wrap on another trip through the greatest decade of cinema. If we sparked a memory or helped you rediscover a classic today, please head over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. It truly helps the show reach more fans like you. To make sure you're always in the loop for our next deep dive, hit that follow or subscribe button right now. If you want to help keep the show running, consider becoming a partner at buymeacoffee.com. And for more 80s goodness, our digital headquarters is always open at 80sflickflashback.com. And while you're there, check out our TeePublic store for original designs and movie-inspired merch that'll have you looking like an 80s icon. I just released some new designs based on Naked Gun and Airplane and Major League, so go check out those designs when you get a chance. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining. Thank you all for listening. For 80s Flick Flashback, I'm Tim Williams. Jack Flack always escapes.